It wasn't the planes. It was Beauty killed the Beast.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smarts, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new movie review or Underrated Gems episode again. And this Underrated Gems episode is going to be for a film that is from 2005. It's another monster film. It's from 2005 this time, and it's not another Godzilla movie. It's for Godzilla's nemesis, another giant monster, who is an ape. It's, yeah. And it's for a King Kong film. And no, it's not Kong Skull Island, not yet. It's not the 1933 original Kong, because I haven't really seen all of that. I've only seen the ending of that movie. And it's not any of the sequels to it. It's for the 2005 remake of the same name as the 1933 original from Peter Jackson. And that is the more mixed received King Kong 2005. Yeah, so what's the plot of this movie? Well, because you know the original movie's plot, a greedy producer named Carl Denham needs to finish his movie and has a perfect location. That is the faraway island of Skull Island. But he needs to find a needy lady. And this son ends up being a woman named Anne Darrow. And no one knows that they're going to counter what they're going to counter on this island and why it's mysterious. But once they reach the island, they immediately find out. And what lives on this hidden island is a giant gorilla named King Kong, and this beast now has Anne in its grasp. And Carl and Anne's new love, Jack Discroll, have to now travel through the jungle looking for Kong and Anne, and avoid all sorts of creatures and beasts like dinosaurs, big bugs. But Carl also has another plan in mind when he finds this Kong. He plans to pretty much capture Kong and exploit Kong to all of New York for more fame and glory. How was this made? Well, development of the project began in early 1995 when Universal Pictures had approached Peter Jackson to direct the remake of the original 1933 film. The project then sadly stalled in early 1997, and several ape and giant monster-related films were under production at the time, and Jackson was going to be going off to direct the Lord of the Rings trilogy. As the first two films in the Lord of the Rings were commercially successful, Universal immediately went back to Peter Jackson in early 2003, several months before Return of the King was about to be released, and expressed interest in restarting development on the project. And Jackson eventually agreed. So filming for King Kong took place in New Zealand a year after Return of the King had released, from September 2004 to March 2005. And of course, it ended up being one of the most expensive remakes ever produced, because its budget climbed initially from $150 million to $207 million. So after this movie was shot and marketed and I mean crazy marketed, the marketing was everywhere for this movie. There was posters everywhere I went. Hell, Burger King even advertised this movie with a Kong-sized Whopper. I think it's even still around. It's just now called the Triple Whopper. It's now just kind of called the Triple Whopper, really. It's kind of still in Burger King, except it's just not called the Kong-sized Whopper anymore. It's now the Triple Whopper. But yeah. King Kong would go on to premiere in New York City on December 5th, 2005, and would go on to be theatrically released to the public in Germany and the US a week later on December 14th, 2005. And of course, with the critical reactions, the film got positive reviews from critics and it appeared in several top 10 lists for 2005. The people praised the special effects and performances, a sense of spectacle in comparison to the 1933 film, but there was people that also criticized the 3-hour runtime and maybe some other things. But however, it was a commercial success at the box office because it made over $556 million worldwide, and at the time of this release, it was the 4th highest grossing film for Universal, and it was the 5th highest grossing film in 2005. And on home media in March 2006, when it released onto DVD, it got 100 million in DVD sales. And at the Academy Awards, it won for Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Visual Effects, and an Italian video game got released as well. Now, as for my reaction to the film, okay, here it goes. I know there are some people that are not fans of this movie, and I can understand that, but personally, I am actually quite a fan of this movie, and I consider it the best Con film in my eyes. And that's going to piss off many original fans, because apparently I just found out a lot of people actually really don't like this movie. This movie technically was my first intro to King Kong, and it made me a fan of King Kong in the first place. So why Kong's my favorite of the two like little kaiju monsters. Between Godzilla or Kong, I choose Kong. What Peter Jackson does with this story is he puts it like heart and gives it edge and a lot of edge. It's fun, it's moving, it never stops being interesting or entertaining, and it leaves you wanting more from its unimaginable excitement. Naomi Watts even gives one of her best performances, and other characters like Jack and Jimmy are very well played and structured that you grow to care for more than just kind of one main character. Especially, you even grow to care for King Kong himself in this version. And there's compassion when he falls from the Empire State Building, because the movie takes its time to set up all these different aspects of the film. And with advances in technology, Kong himself seems much larger than he does in the 1933 original film. He's not as large as the Skull Island version, but he feels much larger than the 1933 version of him. His proportions compared to all the surrounding even helps the viewer with perspective and the feeling that Kong overwhelms a lot of things. And you also have the dinosaurs in this. At first, they're strange. It's kind of strange to see these prehistoric creatures appear in the 50s, because they were all extinct around then. But suddenly in the film, but then again, you also have the blood-sucking things like blood-sucking bugs in the bug pit. It's placed to intense today's viewers. And Peter Jackson, honestly, I'm going to say this. I felt Peter Jackson was the perfect director for this movie. Every aspect of the film was kind of done to perfection. And even though, being this massive blockbuster, it kept this very realistic, raw appearance throughout and did well not to become too cheesy and predictable. The CGI is outstanding, and Kong appeared excellently throughout, as all the other dinosaurs and bugs in the movie. And Jackson's mark on the film, though, to be fair, it's not really felt for the first hour, but from then on, it has the awesome, recognizable style written all over it. So, guys, how do we... the thing is, you know how it kind of starts. If you've seen the original, you're pretty familiar with where it sets. We start the movie it's 1933. I said 1950s, guys. Why did I say 50s? I meant to say 30s. It's 1933. And we all know this is set the same year the original movie came out. This is around the time of the Great Depression. And New York was all struggling. And one of these struggling residents is a performer named Ann Darrow, played by Naomi Watts. She gets hired by financially troubled filmmaker Carl Denham, who is surprisingly played by Jack Black in a surprisingly serious role, to star in this film with actor Bruce Baxter. Anna is hesitant to join the picture, but she learns her favorite playwright, Jack Driscoll, who's played by Adrian Brody, is the screenwriter of it. Filming takes place on Carl's little illegal boat called the SS Venture, under Captain Engelhorn. Under Carl's pretense, it's going to be sailing to Singapore. But in truth, Carl actually secretly intends to film the mysterious Skull Island, that place that nobody's encountered. And Captain Engelhorn reconsiders the voyage, but prompted by his crew speculation of trouble ahead. And during the voyage, Anne and Jack start to actually fall in love. Then the Venture receives a radio message informing Engelhorn that there was a warrant for Carl's arrest because of his defiance of the studio's orders to cease production, and so instructs Engelhorn to divert to Rangoon. But of course, however, the ship then gets lost in fog, and then we ends up running into Skull Island. And Carl and his film crew and cameraman Herb, Preston, Bruce Baxter, and the boom operator named Mike, they explore the island, and once they get there, they see a native kid, that Carl stupidly tries to get a chocolate bar to, and so then they get attacked by the natives. They kill Mike and a crewman, but Engelhorn rescues the film crew, and just as they're about to leave, though, a native then sneaks onto the ship and then abducts Anne. So the natives offer Anne as a sacrifice to Khan, who is our 25-foot tall ape. Jack notices Anne's disappearance, and the crew then goes back to the island so they can go rescue Anne, but Khan is already flee with Anne to the jungle. Then Carl catches a glimpse of Khan and then becomes determined to film Khan to regain the public's attention. So yeah, we start off the movie in New York for like the first hour. Like the first hour of New York, it starts off kind of calm and normal, but once you do finally get to Skull Island after the first hour, there's like not one dark or intense thing lightens up the minute the natives show up. And that's when you know this film is going to get really tense, and it really does. Like Peter, you don't know Peter Jackson liked the Lord of the Rings books, but he definitely loved the 1933 movie. And it's and also those like inspirations are why he's become one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. He first started off with horror movies like Dead Alive and The Frighteners and Bad Taste. And eventually, after those films, he went on to become a masterpiece filmmaker with The Lord of the Rings. And then once like Lord of the Rings was all finished and won all 11 Oscars for Return of the King, he'd go on to remake a 1933 monster film. Like, by around this time, like, people, when Lord of the Rings came out and they announced he was directing it, people were like, this guy's gonna direct a book series? Oh boy, how could this go? Turns out it was phenomenal. Everyone loved it. And then of course Jackson then gets reconsidered because Lord of the Rings is successful. Universal goes to Jackson to film King Kong. And so people are pretty hyped for this. And then this one, on the other hand, unlike Lord of the Rings, gets more mixed results. Some like it or some hate it. Regardless, this film has great effects. Like, Peter Jackson really brought the film to life so vividly, and it's a love story of the jungle or the authenticity of the 30s New York Great Depression. Everything looks right, and it's carefully crafted that the whole world Khan inhabits feels so real. The audience can just accept the fact that there's dinosaurs and this 25-foot gorilla without argument. Yeah, dinosaurs that are somehow still alive. And Khan himself is even well created. Like, he pushes the bar for CGI and human interaction to levels so far beyond. And anything else accomplished that one wonders whether or not such a level would be passed. It definitely likely would be, and most likely Peter Jackson himself. And the casting, while it does seem like a bit strange, like, works wonders for the film. Like, although to be fair, like, Khan himself is easily the main star. It could have not have worked unless there was like, it could not have worked unless there was a great cast to back him up. Like, when you have the other cast members, like Adrian Brody does fine as Jack Driscoll. He's kind of the reluctant hero who, like Khan, he kind of just wants to protect Anne, who's Naomi Watts' character. Then you have Jack Black, who some criticize his casting here as Carl Denham, but honestly, like, I kind of like that I kind of like seeing Jack Black actually play a serious role, which is something he rarely does. And I thought he was fine for the role, for the material he was given. Some may not like his casting, but I actually liked he played a serious role for once. It was actually pretty refreshing. And there's still a few light little comedic moments he gets there, like when he first meets Anne and their first conversation. There's still a few light moments of comedy he does provide, but his performance is not like overly comedic. Like, he's a very morally dubious character, and he portrays his obsession with getting this greedy movie viz right, and then his greedy obsession with exploiting Khan brilliantly. Like you could tell, like, despite the good performance, like, Carl Denham is a nasty scumbag person. You really don't like this character, and I think Black does perfectly good making this character unlikable, or making this character a bad person. Then you got Naomi Watts as Anne Darrow, very exceptional, and she shows the right doses of fear and understands and loves towards Khan. And honestly, like, this was like 3 years after Naomi Watts did that horror film The Ring, which I also enjoyed her performance in that movie very well. Like, her character was likable in that film. Like, you could tell in The Ring she actually really loved and cared for her son and wanted to keep him safe, and like did anything she can to prevent him from dying to that tape. Right there, like, yeah, this is another one of her best performances. Like, Anne and Khan work perfect together on screen, and it's really relieving because the whole film like hinges on their relationship more than the hunters, and that would kind of share loneliness. And Khan in this movie, like in the 1933 film, he's depicted as a monster. Here he's depicted much less of a monster, while, yeah, this is still somewhat of a monster movie. Like, usually monster movie genres got to be filled with grotesque fantasy creatures, and some of those creatures don't necessarily have to be monstrous on the inside. And he gets a bit more sentiments, you get more invoked with him. Like, when he meets this female human, like, Khan goes through a transformation in this movie from a mere monster to a gentle, caring guardian of nature, and a martyr of the crew's peril like villainy. And so basically, in this movie, the crew's more the villains than Khan himself. Here, like, we're in 1933 film, Khan feels a little bit more like a villain. This one here, like, the stuff I've seen of the 33 original, Khan seems kind of more of a villain here in that movie. Like, this movie, Khan actually, you get more development from Khan. And Anna wins Khan, like, so yeah, once, like, Khan has taken Anne, and the crew are setting off to rescue, like, during, like, Anne's time with Khan, Anne manages to eventually win Khan over after our first few scenes of, like, anger towards one another. Like, Anne just managed to win Khan over with her juggling and dancing skills, and then begins to grasp his intelligence and capacity for emotion. Then, of course, like, back to the Hunters. Englehorn organizes a rescue party for Anne, and led by the first mate Hayes and Jack Driscoll, and accompanied by Carl, Herb, Baxter, and Preston. So, however, though, the party gets, like, caught between these herd of Patosauruses and this pack of other dinosaurs that are hunting the Patosauruses. And of course, during the whole entire stampede, like, Herb and several others get killed in the stampede. So then Baxter and the others selfishly and cowardly return to the ship. And so, like, after the whole dinosaur chase, the remaining party members continue through the jungle. They stumble across Khan. Khan attacks them all, and he, like, knocks them down to a ravine on the log they're standing on. Carl, on the other hand, loses his camera. Then after, like, they get fallen to the ravine, we don't see them for a little bit. We'll see them again eventually. Khan then, like, and then ends up getting trapped, end up almost being hunted by 3 Tyrannosaurus Rexes, but Khan rescues her from all 3 of them, like, brutally fights them, even rips out one's tongue, smacks one's jaw in half. Then he brings her to his den in the mountains, and so we get back to the rescue party again, and guys, this is one of the scariest scenes in cinema right here. Like, usually, like, one of the scariest parts of any scariest remake scenes of the 2000s. The remaining party members the ravine they're in turns out to be this giant bug pit. And so the 3 are, like, the whole crew get attacked by these giant insects. And right here, like, most of the rescue party are killed, and unfortunately, like, this death was easily the scariest part of the film. This scene makes the scene really scary. Andy Serkis's character, Andy Serkis also plays Khan, guys. He also plays one of the crew members named Lumpy. These, like, worm things that start biting at him, and he's trying to walk them to the sword. Then one goes onto his head, and, like, his screams are horrific to listen to right here. Like, when it's biting his head, like, it really feels like a horrifying shot. He's, like, still conscious and still screaming as it's biting his head off. Right there, like. And what makes the scene actually also scary is that they don't use, like, scary music. If they used scary music, it would have made the scene so cheesy. It probably would have made the scene way too predictable and cheesy if they just used scary music. No. They use more melancholic, like, drama music. It kind of shows, like, there's probably going to be no hope for them. You know, they're probably not going to escape this situation. There's too many bugs, no matter what they do. No matter how many they kill, like, they're not going to get out of this situation that easy because Carl, Jack, and Jimmy are the only ones left. But they manage to get safe. However, despite that, they manage to get rescued by Baxter and Englehorn, and they end up getting sick. So they end up managing to get saved because Baxter returns at that one moment. The one time he's really likable. He then goes back to his unlikable self shortly afterwards. However, though, after they get escaped, like, Jack though searches for Anne alone, but then Carl decides he sees Khan, and he decides to capture Khan because now his film's destroyed. He can't make his movie now, so he comes up with a new idea. He'll capture Khan. He'll bring him back to New York to be able to like, and just do a play instead of a movie. He'll pretty much now make a play of the whole rescue, and capture Khan and have him be in the show, exploit him to New York. Jack then finds Khan's lair, but just as he's about to find Anne, though, he accidentally awakens Khan. He escapes with Anne. Then they arrive at the wall. Khan's pursuing them. But then, of course, the whole crew starts to capture Khan and begs the crew not to harm Khan. And Khan kills several sailors, but then Carl knocks him out with chloroform. And so they're able to bring Khan back to New York. Right there. So, yeah. Now back to more like the film, like the scenery from 30s New York to Skull Island are magnificent to look at. They look real and authentic. It even looks like a real 1930s movie when you get to the New York scenes. And Skull Island really looks like a terrifying place in this movie. It's like this version of Skull Island really gives you the creeps. It does a great job looking like a very terrifying place to be at. It's a land that's like lost. You can feel the tension, the dread, danger, wonder as you like enter this forbidden land. Like those islanders are just enough to really terrify viewers. Viewers, the minute you meet them, these guys definitely look terrifying to be around. Especially in their first scene when they're attacking the whole crew. Like Peter Jackson's man knows exactly what he's doing. Like this definitely, like honestly, it's good like they picked him to direct this movie because I have a feeling if anybody else directed this remake, I don't think it would have ever been this great. I think it would have definitely been pretty bad. It probably would have been another one of those bad remakes nobody likes. Like, so they picked a really good director for this project. They picked the right person to do this movie. He brought some of the magic from Lord of the Rings into this movie. Like, when you get to Skull Island, like, the Buck Pit really feels like a scene from Lord of the Rings. Definitely looks like one of the scary parts of Lord of the Rings. And Khan was a creature to behold. He acts like your typical gorilla, but in the end, he clearly seems so human on the inside. He's someone how he's originally viewed as a monster, but he's really a gentle giant who's just misunderstood. You see him taken from his home against his own will, made to be this big attraction, and you really feel bad for him. You find yourself rooting for him to lash out at a society that mistreated and misunderstood him. Especially a greedy filmmaker that only cares about himself, like Carl Dunham. And then the end comes, you really feel a sense of grief and sadness. Sure enough, like no sooner does a crew land on the island that the pure spectacle gets unleashed. You got a cavalcade of thrilling sequences that includes the once lifetime opportunity, like watching like Patasaurus tumble off cliffs, a brawl between King Kong and three T-Rexes, and sets off this perfect level benchmark for computer-generated fight sequences. And you got some enormous leeches, like in the Bug Pit, the ones that kill Andy Serkis's character, and several creepy crawlies that look really terrifying. They're not like CGI. They're not making creepy sounds either. These bugs are actually quiet. So that's what also makes them more terrifying, is that they actually act like real bugs, except they're giant and they actually will kill your ass. Like, they're moments of terror, like, masterfully choreographed by Peter Jackson, and you have this perfect little rolling B movie right here. And with the remake's emphasis, like, the character Jack Driscoll, he's torn between art and commercialism, and must learn from Anne Collin to value the ideas of beauty and love. His transformation here is complete when he replaces the Von Collin in the embrace of Anne in the top of the Empire State Building. And by the same token, the story's fourth major character, Carl Denham, he's definitely someone like, well, Black gives a great performance in my eyes, as it makes him perfectly portrays him as a scumbag. Definitely just nasty character, and he's more of a movie enthusiast who lets things get out of hand, but he remains this perfectly well-meaning bad person, but still somewhat of a chap. Like, and many of the minor characters, like the ship's captain, they get some realistic motivations as well. And the Skull Island natives, they're grotesque remnants of a falling civilization. And it wouldn't be a Peter Jackson epic, of course, without the lashing of special effects. Like, Khan is, of course, no exception. Like, Richard Taylor and his Weta team, the results like they do with Khan are truly outstanding. There's technological wizardry unparalleled since the Middle-earth venture. And the crowning achievement is definitely the Khan himself. It gets brought to life by the acting of Andy Serkis, Andy Serkis did Khan for motion capture, and he also played Lumpy, the guy that died that horrific death in the Bug Pit. And some very well detailed CGI. And and once again, like, back to the lore of the story, like, they captured Khan. Now, like, once they get back to New York, like, this is how the finale goes for the 1933 original. I'm very well familiar with how the original movie ends. And if you've seen the original, you know exactly how this movie's going to end. If you've seen the original, and this is technically a remake of that movie, you know how it will end. It's really not that obvious. Like, Carl and the crew get back to New York City, and once, like, during that whole winter, because of the ice skating scene I'm going to get to in a bit, I just realized this is set during the winter season. Carl Dunham presents a show called King Kong, the Ape Wonder of the World, on a Broadway stage. And it stars Baxter and an imprisoned Khan, and Anne has clearly chosen not to take part in the performance, clearly wants nothing to do with the show, so she gets replaced by this anonymous chorus girl that doesn't even know him. So, of course, Khan is agitated by the chorus girl not being Anne, and flashes from all the cameras, so that pretty much pisses him off. So guess what he does? He breaks out of the chains that Carl lies saying are strong enough to keep him in place. And he wreaks havoc in the whole theater. He bursts out, he rampages through the streets of New York looking for the real Anne. And he can't find the real Anne like anywhere. And he chases Jack before he manages to finally encounter the real Anne. And so he leaves with the real Anne. Once Anne also recognizes him, then the U.S. Army attacks, and Khan tries getting Anne and himself to safety we know how the original ends. He climbs the top of we know how the story goes. He climbs at the top of the Empire State Building with her. And you do get a bit of before that though, you get a more mixed received ice skating scene. This is kind of a scene that people are known to not like. Some say it ruins the film for them. But personally, it may seem a little bit too silly for a King Kong movie, but honestly, I think it's kind of a nice scene because it's kind of nice to have at least like one last nice scene of them together before the heartbreaking finale happens. Like it's nice to have like one last bit of happiness between the two before before the ending we all know how it's going to end happens. That's how I kind of view it from my point of view. Let's give them one last scene together before they have to kill off Khan in such a heartbreaking way. So after they get up the Empire State Building, they get a nice little view of all of New York. But then sadly, the planes arrive, and then Khan fights the planes. He manages to down 3 of them. I think from what I remember in the original part I saw, the original movie's ending, I think he only gets 1 of them down. This time he gets 3 of them down. But sadly, though, the planes still win because we all know how it ends. He's mortally wounded from the plane's gunfire. And of course, sadly, this is easily one of the most this is probably the most heartbreaking King Kong moments here. He's getting one last glance of Anne, and the performances are very well done here. She's watching the life fade from his eyes, and he then just falls to some really and it's just a quiet moment right there. You don't really hear much sound as you see him fall from the Empire State Building, but you really feel Anne's heartbreak here. Naomi Watts gives a very great performance in the scene right here as she's watching Khan die in front of her eyes, and very heartbreaking moments right there. And I think it's a pretty well done acted scene. Then, of course, as Jack had broken into the Empire State Building, it was definitely satisfying to see him actually punch a few soldiers, because these soldiers, honestly, definitely, you don't really like these soldiers, and they deserve it. So it's nice seeing Jack actually punch them. And then, just as Khan has fallen off, he reaches the top of the building, and he comforts and embraces Anne. Then, of course, we get more disgusting treatment of Khan from the civilians, because they gather around the beast corpse on the streets, and literally they're even taking pictures on top of him. So yeah, that's just disgusting. Fuck these people. I'm kind of glad half their city got destroyed, because they honestly don't seem nice at all. They're literally even insulting, they're even insulting Khan, saying that dumb beast should have known better and just got himself killed. You fuckers killed him. Fuck all of you. Bystander Khan's airplane's gone, but then Carl Dunham, makes his way through a crowd. He takes one last look at Khan and says the iconic quote that closes off the story: "It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast." And then he just solemnly walks away, and then the movie's over. It's the same exact ending as the original, except it's kind of done with more depth, whereas in the 1933 original, Anne's afraid of Khan and always screams whenever he found her. In this one, in this movie, Khan and Anne have more of a bond in this film, and you can feel their emotional connection throughout the film. In the original, it's we know it's an average monster movie action scene, but in this one, it's an action scene still, except it's done with some more dramatic turns and done with some more depth to the characters. Yeah, that's kind of how it ends. This one does not end on the original didn't really end on a happy note. This one especially does not end on a happy note either. Ends on a much more downer note. Khan is dead. Anne is clearly devastated by that in this version. Her and Jack do reunite though, and it seems like Jack now, you can tell by Jack's face throughout the whole finale, he now feels guilty for getting involved in Carl's plan, and he now feels guilty for being involved in Khan's capture and death. So likely now realize that maybe it's kind of all their faults. And him and Anne might likely still have hope reconciling. Him and Anne's careers will probably be fine. They'll probably still find more theater careers. their careers will still be fine. However, but New York is now going to be in an even worse state than it ever was at the beginning because of Khan's rampage. They probably don't have enough money to repair all the damages because this is set during the Great Depression when things were very hard to afford. Speaking of the latter, like as Carl Dunham's career, speaking of Carl Dunham himself, Carl's career, on the other hand, unlike Ann and Jack's, no, Carl's career is ruined for life. All of this, his career is dead. Not only is he just going to get sued millions of dollars by most of the bystanders for all the rampage, and probably millions of dollars from the families of the people who died on this quest. He clearly does not have, nor really will afford, because he had that warrant for his arrest in the beginning of the movie. Guess what, guys? He'll likely now have another warrant, so he'll easily go to jail this time. Because he was told not to film the rest of the picture, but he did it anyway, and because now he bought a beast that brought back a ape that pretty much destroyed most of New York, he's now going to go to jail for that. So yeah, Carl's life in New York is over. So, like, on the best side, like, Carl does somewhat get will get somewhat of a comeuppance off screen, so there's one good thing that comes out of the ending. Like, Carl's career's finished. There's no hope for his career to ever be saved. He's now going to pay the consequences for his greed. Likely off screen. While Ann and Jack's careers will likely thrive, and their lives will likely continue as normal. But yeah. Now, with that being said, as much as I love King Kong 2005, do I have bad qualities with it? Yeah, sure, I do. Like, one thing I can agree on with everybody that criticizes the film, did this need to be 3 hours long? No, it did not. Universal clearly only saw that the Lord of the Rings movies were 3 hours or 4 hours long, and so because those first movies were being successful, they probably approached Peter Jackson and said, hey, we need this King Kong movie to be 3 hours long because your Lord of the Rings movies are 3 hours long. Make King Kong 3 hours long for us. They probably made King Jackson make it 3 hours long. And honestly, just because Lord of the Rings is 3 hours long doesn't automatically mean King Kong needs to be turned to some Lord of the Rings epic with the runtime. Yeah, that's probably just Universal's idea so they could have a Lord of the Rings epic themselves. And success with Lord of the Rings as well. And like, most of the stuff with like the hunters or film crew on the search for Anne, like I feel like most of like the first hour, the New York stuff's not exactly that interesting. The Skull Island stuff is the more interesting stuff. And most of the stuff with the film crew could have been also trimmed down a little bit because they were kind of the least interesting to watch. Like, I don't care much for Jack nor the film guys or Rescue Search Mission. I like the bug pit scene. That shit is fucking terrifying, especially when they kill Lumpy. No dark music in the scene, and just playing sad music because the situation is hopeless makes it scarier. Like, Peter Jackson really loves to have a fear of bugs. Has this fear of bugs, from what I've heard, and like hence why most of his films have scary scenes with bugs. Return of the King, who had the scene where Shelob sneaks up on Frodo and paralyzes him, in which you don't see at all, and there's like no build up to the whole moment, and there's no jump scare in the scene either. This movie has the bug pit and Lumpy's death combined added. Right here. And I also love the giant dinosaur chase with the Pasauruses. That's very epic to watch. And it's definitely nice to see an island where there's dinosaurs still alive. It's pretty creative. Right there. So yeah, like, the bad qualities for me would probably be the scenes with the crew and the 3 hour runtime are my problems with the film. This did not need to be 3 hours long, that's for sure. But regardless of those qualities, I still controversially think King Kong 2005 is a masterpiece for a remake. So guys, in the end, I think King Kong 2005 is definitely worth buying for Peter Jackson fans and King Kong fans that want to see a good modern remake of a 30s monster film. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review of King Kong 2005. And if we're going to rank King Kong 2005, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are interested in seeing Peter Jackson do a Kong remake fresh after his success with Lord of the Rings, then totally buy King Kong 2005 for your collection. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank King Kong 2005, I'm going to give King Kong 2005 an 8.5 out of 10. And there we go, guys. That wraps up my Underrated Gems episode for King Kong 2005. That's all finished. Now, we have finally finished that. This weekend I finally found on Blu-ray for $11.99, or yeah, $12. Thankfully on sale for $12 at Sunrise Records. Now I own this, and now I can finally watch and review this movie. So yeah, so now I reviewed King Kong 2005, it's time to review Kong Skull Island, the first Kong film of the MonsterVerse. And that will complete the MonsterVerse reviews. And so, until then guys, that'll be it for this episode. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Donji Corleone.